We're grateful for who God is. That list of names given, holy and mighty and all of that, that's just the beginning of things. When Jesus was jousting with the Pharisees, Jesus made it clear to them that when you start talking about me, you're talking about something that surpasses Abraham. Because before Abraham was, he said, my name is I am. In other words, when you open up the book to look at all of the good things that a person can possibly be, mighty and triumphant and awesome and holy, he says that that's just the beginning of it. He had to close the
Who I Am America. My name is Darick Spears, Darick DDS Spears. Born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, born and raised. Grew up in a household where I had two older brothers and a sister that was a year, me and her a year apart. We grew up like a lot of kids in I want to say the ghetto areas. You know, we grew up around, impoverished areas with not that many opportunities. Within my household, it was always adventurous. With me, I always had a creative mind, and I love to create things in my own galaxy. But growing up, you have brothers and sisters. You learn very, very quickly how to fend and tend for yourself. So we dabbled into a lot of things around the neighborhood. My mom, her story is she got married to my father when she was 16. So they married young. My dad, he moved over from Mississippi, age 12, and he was in Milwaukee. He basically never met his father. So I've never met my grandfather. I've never met, my mom was kind of the same situation. She had her dad in her life in and out. So we really didn't know our grandfathers. My grandfather that we know was my grandmother's third husband, and his name was John. We call him Grandpa John. He passed away like a year or so ago. So my dad had that journey. He moved on to Milwaukee, and he kind of knew early that he really wanted to do something with his life. So he had my mom had her first. They married she married at 16. She had all her kids by the time she was 20. So she was young. I have young parents, and they went to work, this and that. We would sneak out the house when they left. I would have my older brothers, so we followed behind them. I did, and I have imagination, so I get bored quick. Milwaukee is a very, very segregated city, and I grew up born in the 80s, basically raised in the 90s, where there was a lot of gangs and a lot of regular stuff is going on in the hood, gangs, drugs, all this and that. So we did a lot of fighting growing up and a lot of warring with different neighborhoods, and I got bored with it, but we also grew up in a church home. My parents were not raised in the church. My dad actually met God at age, I would say 18, 19. He was he was actually in an attic smoking weed with his friends, and he kept hearing a voice say, "You on your way to hell, boy." So he kind of was startled, and he went outside, and he saw flames, and he said the next day he kind of ran into a lady who asked him did he want to go to church, and he started his journey with God then. So we had when you get a family that's really early immersed into the word of God and all that, they were very strict. We had a very strict household. We couldn't listen to secular music, so we would sneak, and everything we did, we basically snuck to do it. We would sneak and listen to the box. That was my introduction to hip hop. My oldest brother, he would bring home a Tupac tape or something like that, and I was just so intrigued. I was always into writing and poetry and stuff like that. I was always into creative writing because I got bored a lot of times when we'd be out on the block. You go play basketball, you go fight the next neighborhood, you this and that, and I'm like, man, I'm kind of tired of that. That's not really interesting me. So I like to use my mind a lot. I always carried a notebook. So it was one of those. My primary stages of growing up was basically learning how to survive in the hood. You learn rules and principles early. When you join the gang, you learn you learn all of the principles, you learn all the rules. I mean, it's kind of probably out the door now how kids are raised, but we had to learn the snitch code. We had to learn, fighting and, standing up for. I learned all of that early. So one thing about me that was different was um, I had a relationship with God early because I used to see my dad. He would be at the table reading. He was a minister. He would read the Bible, and it always interested me. So I used to ask him questions, but I used to also dream and hear voices. Hear God's voice and all that early in life. So I started to develop a relationship with God early. Not so to say not taking anything away from my brothers and sisters, but they were really more into other stuff, and I kind of was more. I was extroverted, but I was introverted as well. So I would be like talking to God and doing this and that. And I didn't really want people to know what I was doing, but then I got kind of verbal with it, bold with it and tell people like, yo, I talk to God, I see angels. I used to say all this kind of stuff. And they'd be like, oh, this dude is crazy. But getting back to my household, I really learned how to, at one point, my mom and dad, we entered the church world, and anybody who know anything about the Black church, a lot of times it's a reflection of the communities and stuff like that. It's always Black people, and I want to say it like that, but it's like we have a competitive edge, and we bring it over into the church a lot of times. We're in a choir, we compete next to this next choir. My dad got me a drum set. I found myself practicing every single day so I can compete against the next drummer. And it was really like another type of war that was going on, not just on the streets, but it was in the church. And I was just like seeing this as a child early, and I really didn't like it. So I spoke out a lot about it. And I always people associated me with being like a rebel, but I was just a rebel not for a cause, because I saw things that this wasn't right. So my pops, he got us all into instruments. My brother, he got him a piano, a keyboard. My other brother, guitar. I was the drums. My sister, she to this day is still my favorite singer in the world besides Whitney Houston. Rest in peace, Whitney. So she always sang. We always had a group or whatever. But a lot of times when my brothers and them was on the block doing their thing, whatever, I would sneak back into the house, and I noticed that they never was playing their instruments. So I told God, I said, Lord, give me their gifts. I said, they don't want to use them, let me get their gifts. And from that day forward, that's where my music production skills came into play. I learned how to play the keyboard by ear. God kind of gifted and blessed me with gifts to play music and do all that kind of. I never thought years later I'd be producing music or even publishing books and all that kind of stuff. But that gift was created then that day in that second when I asked him, and I told him, give me all the gifts and I'll use them. And one thing about me, I use my gifts, and though my gifts help me escape a lot of things. Your gift will make room for you. So a lot of times when I was going through things, we went to public schools for a minute. I would say to third grade. My sister, my brother, and I, we had an opportunity to go into a program called the 220 program, and that was to let young kids from the ghetto go into suburban, more higher prep schools. So that was my introduction to racism. That was my introduction to white people, and I had never really seen white people. And we driving through from the inner city to the suburbs, and all of a sudden we're surrounded by all of these white kids, and it's a busload of kids, and we just like, we didn't know what we were going to be going through. We went through, I'm talking about blatant racism. Go to your friend's house, sometimes they be eating food and you be sitting in the other room while you're paying. And we went through that. We didn't understand it, but it made us stronger, because by the time we left that school system, it was like reverse. A lot of the white kids were in Milwaukee living in our city, and it still probably do to this day. And we integrated, and we found respect. I still have my oldest daughter's godfather. He's one of my white friends that I met in third grade. We still friends to this day. So it was like some good people and some bad, but it was also a test of my strength. My brother and my sister, they got held back a grade as soon as they got there. And that was my first time really feeling a lot of pressure, like, oh man, on the family, like, I don't want to be looked at as just this dumb kid from the ghetto. I always excelled in school, so I used my mind, and my gift that God gave me to use my mind really helped me to escape a lot of things, because a lot of us don't use our mind. We choose to use emotion over logic, and I always talk about in one of my books that you should choose logic over emotion. The neighborhoods I grew up in, we tend to use our emotion first, shoot first, ask questions later. That's what this you taught, but the thing is, the questions sometimes could stop you from doing the shooting. You know what I mean? So the logic over emotion. Going into my second phase, as I became a teenager and I went through problems. I talk about in one of my books called The True Story of Fatty Spears. You go through puberty, you go through conflict in high school when it's all about status and everything. And I got cut from the basketball team. We know when growing up in the hood, all I wanted to be was a basketball player. So when I got cut out there, it was a shame. In high school, people laughed. Oh man, I got teased. My older brother, everybody teased. It was teasing because at the time I was overweight and I knew how to play basketball because I could beat all my friends basketball. I always beat them, but I had to learn the fundamentals. And I got cut freshman year. I got cut JV year, and it was just tearing at my confidence. I was suicidal with my suicide letters and all that stuff, man. I went through all of that, and I just kept going, and at that part of my life, it set a mark and a precedent that actually catapulted me to where I'm at today. I kept going, and I got to the point where, they were laughing, and at the beginning of the year, they're like, oh, is this guy gonna try out again? And I'm like, yeah, I did it, and I tried out, and at my junior year, going into my junior year beforehand, I had enrolled myself into a basketball camp. I saved my money. I asked my parents. They sent me there. It was a Wisconsin Badgers camp. And I actually got a lot of praise from the college coaches. I was doing well. I was killing everybody on the court. I was just like, my confidence started to get older. So I went into my junior year, the same whispers was happening. Oh, is this Fatty Spears going to try out for the team? And I went to condition and I did everything, but I didn't have my WIA form. And I came to a point, not where I really gave up. I just didn't care anymore. And I didn't realize the varsity coach had been watching me all that time. And he came to me and said, hey, why did you show up for tryouts? I told him, I said, I didn't have my WIA form filled out. So I really didn't. He was like, no, I'll give you 3 days to try out. And I went in there and I tried out, and I'm used to the whole lingo and the whole game. Hey, I'm used to them calling you in after you get done. And sorry you didn't make the team, this and that. But for some odd reason, this time he said, hey, I didn't find no flaws in your tryouts or anything you did, and welcome to the team. And it was kind of like that set a standard for me that day. I was like, whoa, like that was like really one of the first times I saw myself see something straight through all the ridicule, everything. And I was like, that became my ground zero. So to this day, when I got an issue or I got a problem that's ahead of me, I say, hey man, you did it back then with the Fatty Spears story. You could do it now. And that became my journey in America. That's what I took. Sometimes you don't know, you got to see something from the beginning to the end. And I learned that a lot of times. My father was a very determined individual. So when I hear stories, growing up, and I love hip hop, and most of the hip hop and most of the young Black America story is, they grew up in a household with no, they either had one parent or they didn't have no parent. My dad, he grew up in that type of household, but he still took care of his kids, and he didn't even have to say it. He never said it to us. He never said, hey, I did this, so you got to do this. He just led by example. And that's one thing I've learned to do. I don't preach at people and talk down to people. I just lead by example. And he didn't give me, I don't have an excuse, you know what I mean? I know you get issues and, with your relationships. And I know all of that stuff happens. And sometimes it's bad that two people can't get along and they try to exit somebody out of their life, like a father or whatever. But it gave me an example to be a walking example for people. So I was the first person in my family to ever go to college, so I got enrolled in college and got accepted to Marquette University. my senior year, and it was the scariest thing in the world because my older brothers wasn't going to college. They didn't, they was hustling on the block, doing their thing, and I couldn't call them and be like, hey, what's the syllabus, or what's the bursar office, what I got to do? So I had to learn all of this stuff as a trailblazer myself. It was some programs that helped, and I think programs like EOP, Educational Opportunity Program, and stuff like that helped. But I was really on that journey, and it was just me and God, and that's been kind of like the common denominator for my life. I tell people all the time, man, get a relationship with God, like not a relationship, so to speak, like people think like I got to go to church every Sunday. I had a relationship with God, every day. I don't wait to get to church to talk to him. I talk to him every day. And I study the roadmap, which is the Bible. And I didn't always follow everything. Trust me, I was never the perfect, and I'm still not perfect to this day. I did a lot of stuff that I wanted to do, you know what I'm saying? So I got to college, and I was free in the house. So I went in as a theater student. I wanted to walk on to basketball, but then I fell in love with music. And I started recording music, and I became like the campus rapper, and the city around the city passing out. Back then it was my cassette tape, CDs, whatever. I was just really expressing myself, writing plays, doing all kind of stuff. And I did not know early on, even I look back now, what it was preparing me for, So I met my wife my senior year in college. I was jaded, I was partying, had girlfriends, doing all kind of stuff, but I still was holding on. You know what I mean? I still would take the bus to church or get a ride. I was still holding on. I was holding on to my faith because my faith is my basis. It's my foundation. And I think I wanted to show an honest. One thing I didn't see growing up in the Black church a lot of times, honesty. I would see people tell me stuff outside of church, and I'm like, why don't y'all talk about that inside so you can help people on their walk? Like, if you're gonna be real, be real. Because a lot that keeps people from not going. People don't want to go if they're not feeling like you're real. So I vowed always, even as a young man, always put that truth in my stories and my songs and my music and my books and anything. I mean, I always just vowed to tell that truth because I wanted to help people see it through. Even later on, as I met my wife, got married, this and that. I saw the things that go in a marriage. I always wanted to be just transparent. I feel like honesty. I got honesty from my father. He's an honest preacher. He would get up and preach and scare people because he was tell the truth, and I loved that. It was a double-edged sword. I told him, I said, there's a lot of stuff I didn't agree with what he said sometimes, but I said, but always tell me the truth because I want to know the truth. And that's one thing I got from my household. My mother was a hard worker. She had her own daycare for like 20 years. So I always saw the system of, we had foster kids in the house. I always saw them helping out other people. And a lot of times the help wasn't appreciated. We were at a church for almost 20 years or whatever. And our pastor, rest in peace, he died. And my dad was already assistant pastor. Church was all in his name and everything. And the son at church, he decided he wanted to be pastor after his father died. And they did it. And this happens in Black churches. I'm telling you, it happens. And they basically kind of took over the whole like paperwork and stuff and tried and basically pushed my family out. And that kind of showed my family firsthand that you could roll with people and be close, but they don't have their best interests at heart, and that was a trial that we had to get through. And once again, I went back to my Darick Spears story. Hey, you was ridiculed, this and that, keep pushing and trusting in God, and he'll raise you to another level. And just speeding up to where I am today. I was a stay-at-home father for 10 years. It was one of the hardest jobs ever. I have 3 daughters. My oldest daughter's autistic. And that was the biggest test for me because I was working in corporate America. I was a counselor, and then I lost my job because I went through the politics of, I was influencing a lot of African-American kids through a program called Upward Bound. And a lot of the other counselors were kind of offended. They weren't offended. They were I would say they were kind of jealous and intimidated by my presence because I influenced a lot of the kids. They had, they were from the same neighborhoods I was from, and they would come to me and ask me for advice, and it got to the point where it just caused the director, who was a white guy, he was like, "Oh, you're kind of bending our program in half because the kids don't want to talk to anyone but you." Irony of it, the guy told me, "Oh, I think you should go into entertainment," and I'm like, "What?" Because I really cared about these students, and when I left, they told the students that I just left and I didn't give a care about the students, which was a bad. Anyone who works in those systems, it kind of had me depressed. So I went into that. Depressed, and I went into a 10-year state. I mean, I was raising 3 girls. God is the only one who got me through. During that time period, I was frustrated. I even went to McDonald's with 3 degrees, my friends, trying to get a job. It's like God had me blocked off. I couldn't get a job anywhere. And some people go through the struggle now, and you got to understand God has a purpose for you, because I didn't see where I would be today. After the 10 years were up, I was like, Lord, I have been through so much. I had my therapist coming to my house 35, 40 hours a week. This is for like almost 10 years. And I had no privacy. I was just like, how do men do this? I mean, how do women? And I have gained much respect for anyone who's a stay-at-home parent. It's one of the hardest jobs, because each kid is a job. And then keeping the household together is a job. Then you got to try to give yourself a career. That's a job. So you got like 5 or 6 jobs going on, and it's crazy. But I was talking to God as my 10 years up, because my goal was to get all 3 of my girls in school full time. And my last one finally was old enough to be in school full time. And I was like, Lord, all right, I thank you, Lord. I got to that point. I did it. And I was like, at the time start writing books, because I was just like, I was doing music and stuff like that. I was all kind of stuff. I was going to the Grammys. I was expressing myself creatively, which is the outlet God gave me. So I was doing that all through the 10 years. And finally I had wrote like 10 books, and I started a book box subscription. And I was like, Lord, what should I do? And I heard the voice of the Lord say, open up a bookstore where you wrote all the books. And I laughed, and I was like, what? And he was like, open up a bookstore where you wrote and published all the books. So I said, okay, because I'm one of those people that say, okay, let's try it. So I started writing, and I couldn't, and I know it was God, I couldn't stop writing. Within a year or two, I had published over 100 books. And I asked God for a store, an actual brick and mortar, because I was online, and it was very, very, I know it was God, because I want to say I was praying that morning, and 2 hours later, my mom called me, and she said, hey, we were looking at this building, and because they were looking at it for something they wanted to do, but the guy the building owner turned him around and said, nah, I'm not. He turned him down, and they were like, well, we got a son. He may be good for this building. He was like, what does he do? He's like, he writes books. And he said, tell him to give me a call. So I called him, and I went in the next day, and I walked into the place. It has nothing in it at all. But I saw the vision instantly when I walked through the door. I saw a bookstore. And I said, wow, okay, this is it. But I had no clue how I was going to do it. So I was like, Lord, I started talking to the guy. He's an older white guy. This is the funny part. I came in with my preconceived notions or whatever. And I came in, I'm finishing. I came in, and I'm like, you know what? He's not gonna like me. So we talking to each other, looking at each other, and I'm telling the man I'm gonna open a bookstore where, the first bookstore was kind of, I wrote all the books, everything. He's just staring at me, and I'm like, so he starts talking this and that, and he walks me around the store. He said, hey, he walks around the space. This is this and that. And I gave him an offer, and he was like, you gave me the lowest offer of everybody. He was like, and I just turned down like 22 people. And I'm like, 22 people? I'm thinking in my head, oh, I'm really not gonna get this. So he said, but I'm not gonna turn you down. And we went outside in the front, and I'm looking through the window, and I see my own reflection. And he said, sometimes you just gotta take a leap of faith. He said that to me, and it was almost like God speaking through him to me. And I said, whoa, okay. I said, I'm going to take a leap of faith. I'm going to go ahead and go downtown, get everything together. And I did. And just put it like this: a year or two or so later, I'm here with Darick Books, the first bookstore of its kind. I saw myself oddly when God told me that. I saw myself on the news and all kind of, and I've already been on Fox 6 and CBS and all. I've already been on the news with my store and everything. And I'm like, whoa, it's like when God puts something in you, follow your vision, no matter how hard, no matter what you go through, it's for a reason, and believe in yourself, you know what I'm saying? And something, believe in something of higher, and network with people and learn that America is going to have good and it's going to have bad. You decide if you want to be the good, you be the change that you want to see. So that's some of my story. Yeah, it's not all of it, but it's great. You got to be my onion. You got to peel it back. But I just wanted to share some of my story with America.
We send them off with a tear and a smile, knowing they'll go the extra mile, fearing the knock on the door. We hold our breath for what's in store. We pray and we go on about our day, the sacrificial lamb. Seemingly no one gives a damn. They are the forgotten. The calamities of fate seemingly will devastate. Some of them have made it to see another day, only to be casted away, trying to unsee the things they have seen, rocking back and forth, unable to break free. They are the forgotten. They are the forgotten. They are the forgotten. They come back with despair in their eyes, unable to keep their eyes on the prize, stumbling round and round, flashbacks of the battleground, running from corner to corner, replaying the horror. They are the forgotten. They are the forgotten. They are the forgotten. Silent voices filter their minds, unable to unwind. Aimlessly they roam, kicked out from the place they call home. We foreclosed on our own heroes. They are the forgotten. They are the forgotten. They are the forgotten. They are the forgotten. Definitely drop the ball. Stop catching them when they fall. Homeless with nothing to eat. They are the nameless on the streets. But for us, deep within the